It's time! Time to slam the burnout truck on its face, man. I've been waiting for this. It's not currently running, so getting this thing into the garage was a freaking hassle. I've already got the bed pulled off, which wasn't too bad. I was able to utilize my gantry outside and the hoist from Harbor Freight to pull the bed off. The hardest part is just getting it in the garage because the way the mass airflow is right now, it's ready for a speed density tune, which has not been flashed into the computer yet. So it'll run for a minute and then die, so I'm not able to drive it into the garage. But with that being said, I got it using some redneck ingenuity. I plan on doing a C-notch in the rear. Try to do at least 8 inches in the rear. I'm aiming for 5 in the front. I've got a set of QSA 2-inch drop spindles for the front. And I'm also gonna cut a coil out, at least 1 coil, and then just see where that puts me, see how it's looking. So yeah, I've got it in the garage. I'm gonna go ahead, pull the wheels and tires off of it. I'm gonna mark the center point of the rear end on the frame. That way I know where the center point of the notch needs to be. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the gas tank off, get this out of my way. I was gonna try to get the tune flashed in there and drive it into the garage, which would have been much easier, but wasn't able to do that. So gotta take this deal back off. Yeah, and then just go from there. Alright, so I got the wheels and tires off, marked center point on the rear end, center point on the frame, so I know where to center the notch. All I did was, this is a 3-inch axle. The rear end housing is 3-inch diameter, and you just measure 1.5 inches, put a mark, 1.5 inches, which is half of 3 inches, and then I put a square up to the frame and put my angle gauge on it and make sure it's straight up and down. Put another mark, did that on both sides. That's how I've always done it. Once I get the leaf springs off, I'll try to jack up on the rear end when it's free from the frame and just verify that, you know, it's at least pretty close. I have done that before where I've tacked it in, and when you raise the rear end up, it actually goes forward a little bit. So I might try to go like a 1/2 inch forward with the notch, with the center of the notch. That way when it's lowered, the rear axle is centered in the notch. Yeah, it's almost 4 o'clock in the morning right now, so probably gonna call it a day for now. Get back out here tomorrow when I get home from work and try to get these leaf springs out. Probably done, I don't know, 7 or 8 of these trucks, maybe more, and out of all those trucks, only one of them, those bolts came out of the leaf springs. The bolt gets seized to the metal sleeve that's inside of the bushing, so you have to cut the bolt off, and then that bushing is usually very hard to get out of the leaf spring, which hopefully if I can get the rear ones off, I can just drop it down and then slide the rear end out. I guess I haven't told you guys how I'm loading this, but obviously to get an 8-inch drop, you have to put the axle on top of the leaf spring. So hopefully I can get it with just taking the rear mounts out. These shackles, it looks like this shackle's been replaced. I did notice in the bed where the bed floor has a hole in it. So obviously this shackle broke and the leaf spring went up to the bed floor, which means someone replaced this. So hopefully the bolt comes out of it fairly easy. This side over here has also been repaired. So I don't know, I might get lucky on this one. I did buy some leaf spring bushings just in case I have to torch them out or do the old drill bit trick to get that bushing out. But yeah, come back out here tomorrow and pick up where I left off. All right, back out here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all these brake lines stripped off. These back ones aren't even doing anything. I deleted them to do the burnout competition because you don't want rear brakes. So I'm gonna get rid of these rear lines, which they look to be replaced. They're nice stainless steel brake lines, so I'll definitely save them, but I'm gonna remove them from this truck, and then hopefully My plugs come in the next few days. I'm just gonna plug the outlet of the ABS module where it feeds the brake lines in the rear. Get rid of these, won't worry about these with the notch. Peel back these taillight wires and disconnect the shocks. And I will set the digital angle finder on the rear end just so I can have a reference point for the pinion angle, so I can put it back to that once I get the rear end on top of the leaf springs. Disconnect the drive shaft and get to disconnecting these U-bolts, drop the rear end, and then move on to the leaf springs. Alright, so I got the brake lines off, got all the wires peeled back and out of the way for the taillights. I got the rear end out of it, which honestly came off pretty easy. I only had to cut one of the U-bolts, which is surprising. I thought I was going to have to cut all 4 of them, but it went fairly smoothly other than the dismount you saw there. Fell off the jack and rolled forward, but no big deal. I landed on those wood blocks that my jack stands are on, so no harm, no foul. But this is the moment of truth right here. I'm hoping that these bolts come out. It's going to be much easier if they do, and I don't have to cut these. If I have to cut them, it's definitely going to be more time consuming, but if they come out, I can just lift this up, drop the leaf springs down, roll the rear end back in there on top of the leaf springs, and yeah, bolt her back up and then go from there. But let's see what we got here. Well, the nut came off. As long as this bolt will come out of there. Grab my hammer. Big hammer, big hammer. Probably gonna need a punch too. Stick in that bolt hole and beat the bolt out of there. Hell yeah, boy. I was hoping that this would come out. Since the shackle's been replaced, the bolts probably haven't been in there that long. Hell yeah, dude. One more side to go. Yes. Just made this job much easier. Tell that's not a GM bolt, but I don't even care because she came out. Go the other side. Hell yeah. Oh, what a relief. It's not a huge deal if you have to cut those bolts, but it's just time consuming and you have to burn all that rubber out of the bushing, which stinks the shop up, and it's just an ordeal that if you can avoid it, it's by all means a good idea. So, hell yeah, man. I'll pop those out, get the rear end slid back underneath the thing. so I got the rear end up on the leaf springs, up on the saddles. I made these saddles myself. Made them taller than a normal one, so it acts as a lowering block. You don't have to stack a lowering block under it to get your desired amount of drop. I made this side an inch taller because it takes care of the Chevy lean. When you lower these trucks, the driver's side rear is always like an inch, half an inch to an inch higher than the passenger side once it's dropped. So I just add an inch to the drop block, and yeah, it takes care of it. Even on the mini trucks, like when I did that Colorado, I did the same thing, and it was level in the rear. I am going to have to make some tie-down plates for the bottom where the U-bolts slide down through and bolt to underneath the rear end. I thought I had some that I could make work, but they're not wide enough. I don't know if they were like for an S10 or something. I don't even know. They've been upstairs in my suspension tote for years, but I thought I could make them work, but I cannot. So I will pull out the new U-bolts, get a measurement on those, and hopefully I have some 1/4 inch plate steel over there I can make some tie-down plates out of. But yeah, that's next up on the list, so let's get to it. All right, so I got some 1/4 inch plate steel. Man, I'm running low on this. I'm gonna have to pick up some more. I've had this sheet right here for I don't even know how long, at least 4 or 5 years. But anyways, I took the tie plate, that's what I'm calling it, off of the turbo truck, and just kind of got a rough estimate of where it needs to be. Obviously, I'm not going to be using the same stock U-bolts that I used on this deal. I have these that are a bit overkill, if I'm being honest, and they're quite a bit wider than the stock U-bolt, so I'm going to have to make this bottom plate a little bigger. I went with the 14-inch U-bolts, and I probably should have went with the 12, to be honest. They're a bit overkill, but I figured it would be good to have them a bit too long, where I can just thread the nut up on these deals, and then whatever's hanging down that's excess I can just cut off. That's what I did on the Colorado that I lowered, and it seemed to work pretty well. And these are 5/8 thick, I believe, so they're nice and beefy. But anyways, I had to make this plate a little wider to accommodate these wider U-bolts. So I'm gonna get this plate cut out, and then I will measure and punch for the holes, try to get them equal, and yeah, go from there. All right, so I got one side roughly mocked up there. I said the U-bolts are gonna be too long. I'm gonna have to cut those off once I final mount it. They're also a little too wide, to be honest, but I mean, they'll work. I wish they were a little bit narrower because they are much wider than the leaf springs, but I don't think it'll be an issue, to be honest. Something I didn't know was these U-bolts actually came with these deals, which I would have known if I opened the whole box instead of just pulling out one U-bolt. So that's good to know. Those don't lock it on the nipple that's on the leaf springs, the bolt that goes through there and holds the leaf springs together. The plate that's on my turbo truck has a hole for that, and it kind of holds the plate center so it can't slide and let the U-bolts slide back and forth on the leaf spring. So I'm still gonna go ahead and go through with the plates because I drilled a hole in that, as you saw, for that nipple that's in the leaf spring, so it holds it center. But I might throw those on the bottom of the plate and then run the nut and the lock washer up on these deals that came with the U-bolts, just to help that plate from bending. I mean, it's 1/4 inch thick. I don't think it'll bend, but I mean, I got those. Why not use them? It's not gonna hurt anything. But yeah, I got one side done. Now all I have to do is knock out the other side, which I'm not gonna bore you with filming. It's the same thing. A bunch of grinding and drilling holes. And then once I get that other side done, I'll head upstairs and throw a coat of etch primer and black satin paint on these deals. dry, get them thrown up on the truck, bolt everything up, and get to mocking up the notch. Got both sides bolted down. This first side over here was a bit more trouble than it needed to be. Those tie plates that came with the U-bolts, the hole was like exact for the size of the U-bolt, and when I tried to run it up in there, it got in a bind. So I had to run the Christmas tree bit down through there and open up those holes a little bit, but I was able to get it. This side went together cake once I figured that out. And yeah, those things are beefy, man. Don't think those things are gonna let the rear end move by any means. I'm gonna set the angle finder gauge on the rear end just to double check my pinion angle. Probably should have done that before I tightened them up, but I had the jack in there where I set it the other day, so it should be fine. I've never done a long bed before. On these long beds, the frame kind of kicks in right there where the notch is gonna be, so that may provide a bit of a challenge. I kind of thought about welding some 2x4 quarter wall and making a notch and then just cutting out a top slit in the frame and sliding the notch down in there. But before I go through all the trouble of making one of those, I'm going to see if I can make the notch that I have over there work, where it just plates the outside, plate the inside, weld that up, and then you have a cover over the top and a piece that slides in from the bottom. That's what I always use. That's what I'm used to using. So I'm going to try that route first. Get to it. All right, so it turns out the pinion angle was not good. It was 0 on the rear end, and it's supposed to be 1 to 3 degrees on the same plane from the tail shaft of the transmission to the center section of the rear end. I got it at 5 on the rear end. As you can see, the arrow up is to the front, and then I'll crawl under there and see if I can get a shot of the transmission real quick. All right, so up on the transmission, as you can see, the arrow is up on the front, and it's roughly 7.5, which is about 2.5 degrees, 2.6 degrees, 2.7 degrees. I'm calling that good. Man, I just realized how crazy my hair looks. It's hot out here, guys. I ain't got AC in this garage, obviously. My hair's wilding out, boy. But yeah, I got all that set now. I'm glad I checked it. It'll be worth it in the long run, so I'm not eating up U-joints, especially with how hard this truck's gonna be driven. It's gonna be spinning pretty much wide open all the time. And now I can get back to what I was trying to do before I checked the pinion angle, and that's mock up the notch. So I'm gonna get it thrown up there, remark my center mark on the frame, and yeah, go from there. got both the notches in here mocked up. I just kind of got them close. I don't want to spend a bunch of time leveling them out yet because I'm gonna have to peel them back off and clean up the frame where they're gonna go so I can get a clean weld. Out here, it's not bad. On the inside, there's gonna be a gap right there that I'm gonna have to make a little filler piece for, or I'll just have to stack some nickels instead of stacking some dimes, but no big deal. I think I can get through it. Over on that side, there's a weird spot up in there that I might have to make a little piece for, just so I have a place to weld right there. A lot of this stuff, I just go one step at a time. I'll probably weld the outside in first, and then check that side to side, make sure it's still level, and then put the inside pieces in and check that, and then just make little filler pieces here and there that I need to get a solid weld on both sides. Obviously, if this frame was square and everything, this wouldn't be an issue, but they have a bunch of weird indentions and different parts of the frame where they're welded together. You know, there's like little ridges and stuff I have to grind down when I peel them back off, but like over on this side, that little indention isn't there. So obviously different, go one step at a time. But yeah, get these deals peeled back off and get the frame cleaned up. All right, got the notches peeled back off, and I got the frame all cleaned up out around where I'm gonna be welding on both sides, inside and out. The inside right here where I need to lay a bead. I'm just gonna have to kind of tack it and then move the clamps a little bit to hold it up to the frame. In certain spots, it's pretty good back there and in the front, but like in the inside, there's a few spots that I need to kind of form it to the frame a little bit. I ground down all the big ridges to hopefully make it fit better, but there's still some that are just a little bit too much for grinding, and I don't want to go cutting the shit out of it. It's not that serious. Just get it on there and form the notch to the frame. I did spray the notch with some weld-through primer on the inside, so once I box that in, all that's coated, and I don't have to worry about trying to get paint up in there. I put some jack stands under the rear, shimmed them up so they're tight against the rear. That way if the frame tries to flex or anything, you know, there's something back there holding it, because there is going to be a substantial amount of heat put into the frame rails, so you don't want them tweaking or moving, especially since the gas tank cross member up there is no longer with us. It has left the chat. When I went to put the fuel pump in the deal for the burnout competition, when I did the cam and everything, I wanted to put a bigger fuel pump in it. I attempted to drop the gas tank, and it's a little easier than I thought it was going to be because it pretty much just fell out of there. With that being said, I probably will add another cross member up there and probably one in the back as well, just to stiffen the frame up back there in case I ever tap the wall or something. I don't want the frame to tweak. And I'm gonna have to do something across the notches too, probably for the shocks, because the front shock tab also rusted off and that was just hanging. But yeah, one step at a time. I'll get these notches in and then go from there. Got the shell, the outsides of the notches all burnt in. Some of the welds are better than others. The inside ones are always fairly easy because it's flat and you can just go right along. These out here are a little more challenging for me. The vertical ups always provide more of a challenge for me, but I nailed that one pretty good. Had a nice clean surface on that one. And then I have to make a plate back there for that deal once I get it cut out. Next up, I'll add the top part, get all that welded in, and then I'll go cut those out. And then there's a couple plates I gotta make. I'm gonna make a plate for in that deal over there. I'll probably make like a plate back there for both sides just to add a little structure to the back side because you can't really get a good weld in there inside the frame. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with them. This side isn't bad either. There's a little gap on right there on both sides that I had to really burn it in there, but I mean, not bad. A little rusty on the MIG welding. It's been a couple months since I've done any welding, but I've definitely gotten better at it over the years. I've found that on these frames, there's a shit ton of undercoating that no matter how much you grind, it still just seems like it's embedded in the frame. And you'll be welding good and then hit a spot and it'll start spattering and your weld will start running, and you just work through it. Get the best weld that you can. I promise you that these aren't going anywhere. Got the heat pretty well cranked up on the old Eastwood MIG 250. Burning it in, boy. Like I said, the next step will be getting the top part welded on, and then I'll probably cut out the center and get to making some plates for the deal. All right, so I got the tops of the notches welded on. Some of these welds are better than others. You can tell it's kind of boogered there. There was a pretty big gap up there, but yeah, now that I got the tops welded on, I'll go ahead and get the actual center of the notch cut out. There's enough strength back in the frame now that I can feel good about cutting that out and not having the frame flex or drop down in the rear or anything. So yeah, get that cut out, and then I'll get the cover welded up into the bottom of the notch. And just like that, I have an actual notch in the frame. I'm hoping I went big enough. I didn't want to go through the bed floor on this deal just so I can still have a flat bed floor to put, you know, burnout tires, spare tires in, and just be able to put stuff in the bed and not ding up the notch cover that I would have to make if I did go through the bed floor. In order to do that, I had to be less than 7 inches tall from the bottom of the frame to the top of the notch. And if you look, that's about where the bottom of the frame would be, and it is right at like 6 5/8. My hand's a little shaky. 6 5/8, 6 3/4. So I'm hoping that the notch is big enough because if I wanted to make it bigger, I would have had to raise the notch up more, which, like I mentioned, I didn't want to do. I'm just hoping that the rear end doesn't bottom out in the notch once it gets some weight in the bed. But yeah, I'm happy with it. Some of the welds could be better, like I mentioned, but I'm not too worried about it. They're all gonna get painted. I'm not gonna grind any of them down. I'm not that embarrassed of them. But yeah, I'll get the cover up inside the notch, get all that welded up, and then I'll probably trim off down here just so like the notch is flush with the frame on the inside as well. It's kind of hanging down. Not no big deal, just minor details. So I got the cover underneath welded in. Got these plates on the back welded in, along with a patch panel over there. So the notches are done, man. Other than like, I might add a cross member to those, just depending on where I put the shocks. But for the most part, the notch is done. It is final welded in. I already cut this little evap bracket that I kept hitting my back on. I went ahead and cut that deal out of there. I'm gonna add a cross member up here if the drive shaft will allow me to do that. I know up here, like the bed will sit right there, so I could go on top of the frame if I wanted to, just add like a little bar or something just to kind of stiffen it up in the front. I haven't decided yet. I'd like to put like a 2x4 cross member up there if like I said, if the drive shaft will allow me. I know I'm gonna do that back here. I'm gonna cut this spare tire deal out because, as you can see, there is not much left of that front piece, and I want some rigidity in the rear of the frame in case I tap the wall. I don't want to tweak the frame or mess nothing up, and it's pretty rusty, so it needs all the support it can get. But in order to do that, in order to put the cross members in the rear, I'm gonna have to cut that deal out. So that is next. I'm gonna try the Sawzall, see where that gets me. I might have to switch to the cutoff wheel, but one way or another, I'll get that deal out of there. And just like that, Got the spare tire cross member cut out. Got this deal mocked up in there. It is 2x4 quarter wall, so it's plenty sturdy. Got to clean up inside the frame over there. Try to get some bare metal to weld to. Think I'm gonna do this one, and then I'll probably do one like back here. As you can tell, this hitch is in a great condition. I wouldn't tow with this, but I'll probably do another one like across back there and then put a piece in the middle. But yeah, she's coming right along. I'm gonna go ahead and throw the drive shaft up in there. That way I know where that front cross member can be. I don't wanna weld that cross member in there and then throw the drive shaft in and be like, oh shit, it's gonna hit. Be a rookie move, try to avoid those anymore. But yeah, happy with the notch. Once I get these rear cross members in there, I will move on to the front. All right, so I got these rear cross members all welded in. I got the frame cleaned up pretty well and they welded in there nicely. I did have to cut a little slit in the frame on both sides so I could drop this back one down in there. The bolts from the hitch and everything were getting in the way and I didn't feel like taking those rusty things out. It's easier to just cut a slit, drop it down, and then weld that back up. I threw the drive shaft back in the truck to get an idea where I need to place the height of this front cross member that I'm gonna put in there, and I noticed that the drive shaft was pretty well bottomed out in the tail housing of the transmission. I was able to get it into the rear end, get the U-joint slid into the rear end, but I could tell that there was hardly any play with it sliding into the transmission. So any bump that I would hit or like, you know, uneven terrain, it's gonna shove that yoke of the drive shaft into the transmission and risk messing something up internally. So luckily, this ain't my first rodeo and I marked it. This is where it was stock, sticking out of the transmission before I adjusted the ride height at all. I marked where it was stock and then I marked where it is now. And you can tell it's probably a good inch. Actually, I have a tape measure. Let's go ahead and measure it. Yeah, it's about 1.1/8 difference. So in order to get that play back into this, once the drive shaft's in there, I'm gonna cut 1.1/8 or probably just an inch off the end here. I've done this before, doesn't seem to be an issue. You just cut this off and then you take like a file and clean up all the splines that are inside of the yoke. Yeah, I did this on that Colorado that I lowered and it slid into the transmission fine. Wasn't an issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock that out, get the drive shaft slid back up in the truck and start mocking up this front cross member. I'll get the weight of the truck on the wheels, put some wheels back on here and get it off the jack stand so I have an idea where the rear end's gonna sit at ride height. And then I might add a little extra weight on the rear just to drop it down a little lower. So I know that once I place that cross member in there, the drive shaft's not gonna hit it with some weight in the bed. And yeah, keep moving right along. And just like that, she is an inch shorter. I got it pretty dang straight for using a cutoff wheel. It's obviously not the best tool to use to cut this, but my bandsaw broke, the motor burned up in it, and I have not acquired another one yet, so cutoff wheel it is. It's obviously better than a Sawzall because you can't ever keep a Sawzall steady, but I got it cut down. I just use this triangle file. Really anything with an edge would work. Any file with an edge would work. I like this because you can really dig in there and get all the shrapnel that the blade leaves behind. Put that file in there in between each of these splines, and then I bevel the outside so that's not a hard edge. The stock one was beveled out here, so I figured just take it back to how it was and it should be fine. And yeah, I'll get this deal slid back up in there and get to mocking up the front cross member. All right, so the front cross member is all welded up. I went ahead and cut out this area in here where that stock gas tank cross member was. And then there was like that circle piece out here. I just cut a square out, welded a new filler piece in because it was pretty rusty. And then got this cross member welded on the inside and the back side on both sides. It clears the drive shaft as it is. There's probably a good, I don't know, 3 inches from the bottom of that cross member to the drive shaft. But I took the jack stands out from underneath the frame and I bounced on the truck, and it's not hitting it, but it's getting dang close. So if I ever have weight in the bed and hit a bump, it's probably gonna hit it. So as you could probably tell, I traced out a half moon deal, and then I had some 4.5 inch pipe. Went ahead and cut that in half, and then mark the center on that deal so I can center it in the cross member, center it on the drive shaft. And I'm gonna weld this piece in there, obviously, to add some more clearance for the drive shaft. I'm thinking for these shocks, let me get up in here. Oh God. For the shocks, all right, now that my air compressor shut off, for these shocks, the passenger side is good because that's on the front. These trucks come stock. Anyone that's worked on them knows that one shock's in front, one shock's in the back. But I'm gonna do both of them in the front of the rear end. So this one will work. I'll just utilize the stock lower shock mount and then weld some tabs up here on this cross member. But this side over here, I'm gonna take the plasma and try to be nice to this shock mounting tab and save as much material as I can over there. And then I'll just move it to the front side and weld it. That way both the shocks are going forward. Obviously weld tabs on this side as well for the upper shock mount. But yeah, I'm happy with it. As soon as I get this notched out, I'll pick back up and show you what it looks like all welded up. Got the notch welded in that front cross member for the drive shaft, and I am very happy with it. Took my time and got it dead centered in there, and it looks pretty dang good if you ask me. Always appreciate when there's nice, clean, flat metal to weld to, especially on a frame that's this rusty. Shit gets old, man. You clean it and clean it and clean it, and then you go to weld and it's still spitting, popping, and banging, and makes you appreciate the clean stuff for sure. I also got this shock tab cut off the back side and tacked on the front. I tried to match that side over there the best that I can. It's not exactly square and straight on the rear end. As you can tell, it's kind of angled in. So I tried to do that with that one a little bit. It looks to be pretty close. Not the end of the world if they're not exact, but I didn't want it to be an obvious visual difference just for my OCD. Like I said, it doesn't really matter, but as you can tell down there, if you can see them right there and right there, yeah, they look to be pretty dang close. Obviously took measurements off the passenger side, tried to match the driver's side to the best of my abilities, but the shocks won't be here till tomorrow, so I don't want to like final weld that up or tack the tabs on the front cross member until I have a shock to reference. But yeah, once they get here, go ahead and throw the shocks up in there, get the front tabs welded in, and then the back is pretty much done. I have to trim the U-bolts off because they're hanging down below the wheels, and if I ever do pop a tire in this dang thing and it's on the rims, I don't want it dragging the U-bolts on the concrete, or gonna be a pain in the ass if I ever have to take this rear end back out of here, or, which I'm sure I will, and I'll struggle in the future. But to get the U-bolts back down through that plate, it's gonna be fun if you trim the U-bolt off flush with the nut. There's not really an extra thread to stick down through there and make it easy to get the nut onto, but it's more important to me that I don't tear them up. They're not dragging when I pop a tire, so go ahead and do that. And I'm also going to put a decent weld on both sides of these saddles. That way the rear end can't move, can't spin up or back for that matter. Then the back is pretty much done, man. Got to probably drill a few holes, and I'll put some nut certs in the frame and some type of clip just to hold the tail light harness. I don't have to worry about brakes, which is nice. And yeah, I'll get all that stuff ran back here. I am going to, there's like a plate that was back here on the spare tire cross member, this deal. There was like a little bracket that it slid into, so I'm gonna have to figure something out there. I might just drill a hole in there and run a nut through it. I don't know, it's plastic. Might just zip tie it. So yeah, I'll get back out here tomorrow once my shocks arrive and get those finalized. All right, so the shocks came in today. The Amazon gods blessed me with a package on my doorstep when I got home. These are Monroe shock number 37 to 81. From what I've heard and read, that these are pretty much the same amount of travel and pretty much the same shock as a Beltec Nitro Drop 2. So, and they're a little bit cheaper. I think these are $38 a shock. Got them on Amazon. I'll put a picture of that up now, in case you want to grab a set for yourself. But I know that these shocks are 18.5 inches from center eyelet to center eyelet, completely opened up or decompressed. And I didn't want to just mount them like that because I wanted to have some upward travel. So I pushed this one down until it measured, hopefully you can see that, 16 inches. That way it has 2.5 inches of travel up. That way when you hit a bump and it goes back up, it's not trying to pull the shock out of itself, out of the top part. And they are 12 inches fully compressed, so it has 4 inches of down travel, which I think is plenty. I'm gonna weld these all up, and then I'll probably add some type of gusset right here. I think I got some angle or something. I'll figure out some type of gusset, that way it's not just an open plate right here welded to this cross member. It has some type of bracing on the back side. Are these tabs overkill? Absolutely. Are these cross members overkill? Absolutely. But with the cross members, like I said, I want some rigidity in the rear of the frame, because in case I ever tap the wall, it's not going to tweak the frame, or hopefully prevent it from tweaking the frame. And these tabs are some that I had, and I figured I could make them work, and it's looking like I can. So just utilize some parts that I already had, saves me some time and some cutoff wheels. So yeah, I'll get these final welded, gusseted up, do this side first obviously, then move on to that side, and then I will pick back up and show you the final product. One other thing that I thought was worth mentioning is I'm not welding these deals up with the shock in there, because obviously there's a rubber bushing in there. When once these tabs get hot, it's gonna melt that. So I got a spacer and some washers in there. Just not, I snugged this up, that way it won't warp or move once I go welding it up. So yeah, just a little tip. All right, so this is what I have came up with. I am decently pleased with it. This side right here is a little taller than that side. I'm set them the same, 16 inches, and my bottom mount over here isn't quite the same as the stock one over there, but I mean, it's pretty dang close. That you can tell that one's just a tad bit taller than that one over there, but yeah, man, I'm happy with it. Definitely more time consuming than I thought. Get on here and bounce up and down. I don't have the bolts tight in there. I have to pull the shocks back off. When I go to paint everything, don't want to paint the shocks. They're already black and I need to paint them. But yeah, man, like I said, more time consuming than I thought. Those little gusset pieces were kind of a pain. Once I got the driver's side done, the passenger side was easier. It's how it always goes. Once you get one done, you kind of get in a rhythm and get an idea of how things need to go. I was gonna put a plate up here. I sprayed this with edge primer, so once I welded that plate on there, I could not worry about having to get paint up in there. But then I realized that if I put a plate there, that's gonna create like a little trap deal for water and debris to get into. Not that it's that big of a deal, but I want to try to preserve it if I can. And it's plenty strong enough as it is. But yeah, man, I'll pull the shocks back off. I'm gonna quickly buzz the whole frame down with the wire wheel. Gonna hit all the bare metal spots with edge primer, and then I got, I think, 4 cans of the rust reformer. See how far that takes me. Not real worried about it. Get as much coverage as I can. The parts up here by the cab are pretty bad, honestly. The amount of miles that this truck has, it's to be expected. So I'll just buzz some rust reformer on there, hit it with some black Krylon satin, and yeah, get back out here tomorrow and get to buzzing it down with the wire wheel. All right, so I got the frame all painted, finished up. Once this stuff dries, I'm going to scuff the cover. I forgot to do that before I started painting the frame. Paint that black as well, just to make it match a little better so it doesn't stand out. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. Looks much better than it did. Obviously paint doesn't fix rust, but it definitely looks better. Once this stuff dries, I will also get the shocks thrown back in it and then run the taillight harness. I didn't want to run the taillight harness, and then paint over it. So I'm just gonna add some clips to the frame to attach the harness. But one thing that I wanted to mention, I've always been a Rust-Oleum guy. I don't know, it's what I've always used. I think a can of Rust-Oleum now is like almost $9. And they were out of it one day, so I bought this Krylon Fusion. I always go with the satin black. I like the finish of it, and surprisingly, I like this way better than the Rust-Oleum. It covers better, it sticks to stuff better, the cans spray better, they don't always get clogged, and I always forget to clean them out, of course, so to be able to pick one up and it still sprays is nice. I just thought I'd mention that. I'm very, very happy with this stuff, and it's cheaper. I think those are only like $6 a can. But yeah, I'll get back out here once this dries and get the shocks thrown up in it. All right, so the rear is finalized. I got my shocks thrown back up in there. Got them all snugged up. Got my harness ran. Back for my tail lights, turn signals, etc. This deal right here, I just drilled some holes and put a nut cert on the inside. Drilled a hole through the little plastic deal and bolted it to the frame. I don't think it's going anywhere. Put some zip ties on her, hold it up back here. And then for the notch, same thing, just put nut certs in there. I have these little clips I put on there, zip tied it to that. Use the stock ones up there, and yeah, the rear is finished. So that takes me to the front. I wanted to knock the harder part out first. I say harder, it's just more time consuming, honestly. It's much easier, in my opinion, than doing this stuff. Well, I mean, if it wasn't all rusty, it wouldn't be that hard, but this truck's got almost 300,000 miles. I think I've mentioned that, and everything on here is seized and extremely rusty. I've already got the driver's side torn apart, as you can see here. I'll go over to the other side and give a explanation of what you got to do to get all this stuff off there. So you got your, that was weird, got your ABS wire that you have to undo from the control arm. Take the brake caliper off, then your upper ball joint bolt nut, lower ball joint nut down there, your tie rod nut right there, and then I use a pickle fork. If you don't want to tear your boots up on your ball joint, just be careful. I always try not to, but I end up snagging one of them. It's just kind of inevitable. If you have new ball joints, it's not an issue, but I just usually slap them back on there, to be honest. If it's something nice, I might replace the ball joint, but in something like this, I'm not going to. You just stick your pickle fork in there and beat the hell out of it with a hammer until it pops free. And then that will get your spindle off. If you don't want to cut a coil out, I did a coil and a half. I said I was going to do one coil, but I got to thinking, and one coil really ain't going to be that much more, and I don't want to be disappointed when I sit this thing on the ground, so I went ahead and did 1.5 coils. If you don't want to take your coil out, you don't have to take the shock out, but I went ahead and did that so I could pull the coil out and cut it. So get your lower ball joint disconnected from the spindle, your upper ball joint disconnected from the spindle, and then that whole thing will pull off your wheel hub, your rotor, and all. If you get lucky, like I did on this deal, the stock bolts won't be in your rotor and the rotor will just pop off. But if those bolts are on there and you have a high mileage truck, that means that no one has ever changed the brakes, which is kind of not likely. But my turbo truck, I went to pull those off. If you saw the front kit prep video, and it still had the stock original factory rotors on it with the bolts in it, even though it has like 120,000 miles on it. No one ever replaced the brakes, which kind of surprising. But long story short, it's a nightmare to get those out because they're Torx bits and they're seized. And if you've ever messed with seized bolts in general, you know it's a pain. But if they're Torx, you snap the Torx bit off every time. So I was lucky enough on this deal that I had the bolts already removed, so the rotor just popped off. And then your whole spindle come off with your wheel bearing. Now, if you have new wheel bearings, you don't have to worry about separating the old wheel bearing from the old spindle to put the old wheel bearing in the new spindle. But I do not. I kind of just spaced it. Honestly, they're not that much. I wish I would have grabbed some with my last Rock Auto order, but I spaced it and forgot, so now I'm struggling. But I put a shit ton of heat with the old MAP gas, and anyone who says that MAP gas is whatever, just use propane. I promise you, MAP gas is better. You sit there for, I don't know, a minute, and that bolt's like damn near red hot, and I'm yet to come across a bolt. I'm gonna find some wood to knock on. I've yet to find a bolt that is seized that after you put that MAP gas to it, it doesn't come out. I mean, these would not budge. Let this thing, the MAP gas, sit there for a minute until it's glowing red, and all the bolts came out of the wheel bearing, wheel hubs, what I'm calling it. And then it's seized to the spindle, so you have to separate it from the spindle. Even with the bolts out, it wouldn't come off. I went through this on my turbo truck as well, and at that time I didn't have an air hammer. I just beat it with a chisel until it came off. It took me forever, but I've since purchased an air hammer, and I have I've got it to separate from the spindle, so I figured I would pick up the camera and just kind of show you what you're looking for on this deal. Gonna be loud. I'll try to turn down the audio a little bit so it's not ear deafening, but go ahead and knock this wheel hub off the spindle and get the old wheel bearing, wheel hub, put on the new spindle. That little clip right there made it look easy. I went around the inside of it, inside the spindle with the air hammer, and then I wedged this in between the spindle and the wheel hub, and you just work your way around and you can start to see it separate, and once you see it separate, move on to the next like edge of it, get that to separate, that way you don't put it in a bind, and eventually it'll pop out there. I did kind of scar it up a little bit, so I'm just gonna take the old Milwaukee sander / grinder here and yeah, smooth out all the little scars and stuff that I got in there with the air hammer. The dust shield is a sacrificial piece when doing this. I'm not really worried about it. I'm not gonna put it back on there, but if you were really careful, you might be able to save it. I messed mine up pretty good. I mean, I guess I could probably save it if I just used these 2 bolts and didn't worry about that one, but it's old and crusty. I'm not really worried about putting it back on there, but I'm sure you can order these if you're that worried about it. Just, yeah, it's up to you. So I will get all these scars smoothed out and then get this up in the new spindle. All right, so now that I got it all cleaned up, it's burr free. I take my anti-seize, coat this whole thing. I even coated the spindle, and then I'll coat the threads of the bolts once I go to put those in. Am I gonna ever take this back apart? I sure hope not. It's just honestly good practice. I hate saying things like that because I sound preachy, but if the factory would have put anti-seize on this, then I wouldn't have had to battle it with the air hammer like I did. But and it also acts as lube a little bit, lets it slide in there a little better. So I will take this deal here, make sure your speed sensor is like that, because it routes up on the back side of the upper control arm. Take this deal like this. Drop her down in there. Grab your bolts that are still extremely hot. No, I'm just kidding, they're not that bad. Put a little anti-seize on the threads. If these are real nasty, you might want to take them to the wire wheel. These ones are actually fairly decent, surprisingly. Give them a good coat. Hopefully I can get this in without it falling out. Continue this process for the next 2. Might ask, what's the torque specs on those? Put your impact on 3 and Make sure your battery's charged, and yes. And that one is good to go. But before I put that back up in there, I need to get the coil and shock back in the control arm. Some people may say, oh, I can't believe you cut those coils. Is there negatives to it? Yeah, it's gonna ride a little rougher. There's enough tension on it to where it's not gonna fall out. There is some positives. It goes back in there much easier. I will tell you that. When I took the spindle off, I still had the shock in there so the coil couldn't pop out, but once you pull that shock off, the coil kind of shoots out of there a little bit and the lower control arm will drop down. So I did put a bungee around the coil just so it couldn't fly out and hit me in the face. When I'm putting it back in there, there's not really that much pressure on it since I cut a coil and a half off of it. So I didn't feel in danger. There's a little indentation on the back side of the lower control arm that the coil sits in. Just make sure you got it drop down in there, like the end of the coil will sit down in there. And then it's all flat up in here, so it doesn't really matter up in there. So yeah, now that I got that deal on there, got the shock tightened up, I'll bring the new drop spindle over here, and I always put the upper one in first, the upper ball joint stud, put that in first. I think that way you're not trying to have to pry down on this to get it in, but you can jack up on the lower one and you can get that one in. I think that's how I used to do it. I might be wrong. I might eat my words here in a second, but yeah, put a little ANICs on these as well. The upper ball joint sleeve isn't in bad shape. I didn't really get into that one with the pickle fork, but the lower one, a little rough. Don't really mind. Once that spindle's up in there, it's gonna hold it up, hold the rubber sleeve up on the ball joint, and there's a shit ton of grease in there, so it should be fine. Is it gonna let a little dirt in there? Maybe. So if you don't want that to happen, get new ones, because these are really fun on these trucks. So both these ball joints were fighting me. I haven't had this issue in a while. Probably a sign that they need replaced. But once I go to tighten this nut, it's just spinning. So what I did on the lower one, it worked. You just take vice grips, and once you get the nut on there, the stud will stick through. Clamp your vice grips on the stud, and then you take your wrench, and you can just tighten the nut that way. A little more inconvenient than using the impact, but it'll get it done in a pinch. It's the same trick that I used up there on the shock, because those are always seized. But yeah, just a little tip I thought I'd mention. Alright, so I messed up on the, good job. Messed up on the location of this deal. You do not want it facing that way because your rotor or your caliper goes there. And you don't want this snake behind your caliper, it'll pinch it. So I had to take those back out, no big deal. Slide that over one. So this is facing the front, and then it'll clip up there to this little bracket, and then route up here, and then plug back into this deal. Thought I'd mention that. All right, and just like that, it is all back together. I was lucky enough on the tie rod end, I didn't have to hold it. That one actually took the nut with the impact. I think I mentioned before that these are the QSA drop spindles. I think they're like 200 bucks. I'm not sure, 189 or something like that. They're the cheaper option versus like Beltec or Magaki's or however the hell you say that, Magoy's. Those are like 350, I believe. I didn't want to spend that much on drop spindles, especially for the burnout truck, so I just went with the cheaper option. The reviews were all good. Now after putting one on, I can say that everything fits well. The only issue that I have found is that this little bracket right here kind of goes in weird. It hits the mount on the spindle for the caliper, but I mean, I got that bolted in. It's bolted down, but once you thread this in, clip this deal in, it is extremely tight on the control arm, and that's probably going to rub a hole in there. So I'm just going to leave it loose, you know, so it can not be freaking like a guitar string against that control arm. It's guaranteed going to rub through. So I'm just going to leave that loose. It might flop around a little bit, but I don't think it'll be an issue. It's much better than rubbing on the control arm. The listing on Amazon for these spindles says that you have to run larger than a 17-inch wheel. And I was like, yeah, no big deal, you know, I'll just get some 20s, but just for shits and giggles, I want to see if I can bolt a 17-inch wheel on this deal. I think it's because obviously the whole spindle moves the hub up, and then the lower stud for the lower ball joint, it's gonna rub your wheel. That guy right there. Now if it's just barely and I can cut that stud off, I'm going to, because I don't want to be limited. If I ever get a flat or something, you know, I only have one set of 20s. I have probably 6 or 7 sets of the stock 17s that come on these trucks. So I'm just gonna throw it up on there and see what I gotta do to make it fit. Oh, all right, so I got this deal thrown up on here, and sure enough, you can see in there. Let me get my light. It's just the stud that's hitting. So I'm gonna cut that off and see if it'll hit that nut. Hopefully not. All right, so just trimming the stud off the bottom of that nut was not enough. I put the wheel back on there and it was rubbing the actual nut. So I went back, cut the nut in half, and made sure that my 18 mil socket could still slide on there after I was done cutting it. And now, you can see light through there. No longer rubbing. I'm sure I'll get some comments where I jeopardize the strength of that nut, and I don't disagree. If you don't want to do that, then don't run 17-inch wheels. As I was laying in bed last night, my OCD got the best of me, and I just was thinking about that lower ball joint nut and wasn't comfortable with leaving it like that, so I attempted to drill a hole through there. I was gonna put a cotter pin in there, but as you can tell, there's the graveyard of drill bits. That wasn't really working, so I just ground me off a clean spot, and I just tack that nut to the spindle. Think that'll be fine. I didn't make the weld big enough to where it's gonna be a super pain in the butt to grind that weld off and get that nut off if I ever need to take the lower ball joint out of the spindle in the future. But yeah, that should do the trick. Yeah, this side's all wrapped up. I'm not gonna bore you with doing the other side. Get that knocked out, and then I'll clean up my shop because it is a absolute disaster. Putting those 2x4 quarter wall cross members in the rear added a lot of weight to this truck, but I'm sure I gained some too by knocking all the rust off of it, so I don't feel too bad about it. Like I said, I'll get the other side knocked out, and once I get the shop cleaned up, I'll sit the truck on the ground and see how it looks. Obviously it doesn't have the bed on it, but I'll at least be able to get an idea of how low the front's sitting. You know what the best part about living in Indiana is? When you work on your truck, you get free scrap metal. Gotta be at least 5 pounds. Gonna be faster now. All right, so I got this deal sat back on the ground. Sucks I can't get it out of the garage right now to give you a better view, but she's low, man. It is really close up in the front. Probably got, I don't know, a good 2 inches of clearance, which probably ain't enough, but it's sitting nice. I'm glad that I didn't cut 2 coils out. 1.5 was a little too much, I think. I think I could have got away with just cutting 1 coil, but I'll try it out. I got some other stock coils upstairs if I need to just cut 1 coil out and then throw a coil in it. Ain't no big deal, but I will drive it a few times once I get it back up and operational and just see how bad it scrapes or if it scrapes. The rear is pretty much perfect. The notch is perfectly centered over the rear end and like all my weight, and it's not bottoming out. I pretty much nailed that. Like I said, the front is probably a little bit too low, but it looks good. I'll give it that. And those spindles, I noticed that using spindles, I've never put drop spindles on anything. I usually just cut the coils, if I'm being honest. Call me a hack, whatever. It's cheap, easy. I noticed that using the spindles, it's not nearly towed in as bad. Like, it might be towed out, I don't know, like a 1/4 inch maybe. I'm gonna have to sit my toe plates, my homemade toe plates up on there and just check alignment and get it close. This thing's not gonna be on the road for the foreseeable future at least, so I'm not real worried about it. I'm not ever gonna be going like over 40. It won't be terrible. Just driving, you know, up through the pits and everything at burnout competitions. If the alignment's slightly off, it's not gonna be the end of the world. Let me open the door and I'll get a little view from outside. You can see the whole truck a little better. Hopefully you got a little better view there, but yeah, it's looking good. I'm happy with it. Like I said, hopefully it doesn't rub too bad up front, but other than pulling this deal outside and getting the bed back on it and hoping that those notches don't have to go up through the floor, I'm pretty sure I measured that correctly to where they don't. You do have to trim the center brace on the bed floor that the notches slide up into. Just go ahead and you can cut a notch out above the frame for your notch to slide up into, or you can just cut the whole cross member out. I think I'm gonna just notch it, that way I don't have to sit out there and throw sparks everywhere. I am going to put rockers and cab corners on this deal because it's hideous and I cannot stand the look of that. It's just an old shitty burnout truck, but I at least want the cab and everything to look presentable. The bed's obviously gonna get destroyed. I ordered a set of rockers and cab corners for this deal. I think they're like less than $200, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that, but that'll be a separate video. Yeah, I'll pick back up once I get outside and get the bed on this. All right, I got this deal outside. Got the bed all bolted back onto it. Went to set the bed on it, and it was like sitting up. I was sitting there staring at it. I'm like, what the hell, man? Did the frame tweak? And then I realized, hey, dumbass, you didn't cut that brace across the bottom of the bed to clear the notches. So once I got that removed, it sat down on there nicely. There was just 2 spot welds that I drilled out, and then I just took a grinder and cut like in towards the center of the bed. It was probably like a little 6-inch piece that allowed the bed to sit on there flush. But yeah, this thing's pretty low. It's sitting right at like 5/8 drop. I did end up pulling those front springs back out, and I had some other ones upstairs that I only cut half a coil out of, just so the front cross member wasn't like on the ground. I can actually get a jack under it now. For the rear, it's kind of sitting in a dip. Kind of sitting in a dip right now, but the hitch is on the ground. And it also won't be on these 15s. Just looks better in my opinion. Smaller tires in the back for a burnout truck. But if I do a burnout on those with the 15s, the U-bolt plate that the U-bolts bolt to underneath the rear end is going to hit the ground before the wheel does. So I am going to have to put the 17s back on the rear when I do a burnout. Just for now, I think it looks better on the 15s. It just sits lower and gives it a better look. But yeah, man, I'm happy with it. Happy with how it sits. Happy with how the frame turned out. All I got to do now is get a tune in it because it's still not freaking running, which is irritating. I'd like to just fire this thing up every now and then just to hear it run and cycle things. It's good. It's bad when things sit, things go bad. But get a tune up in it here in the next week or so, hopefully, and get her more dialed in and ready to do burnouts. But that's it for now. If you've made it this far in the video, I appreciate you watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. See you in the next one.